Last summer, I set out for the desert. I was 35 years old, a geologist fascinated by strange things in the earth. My team and I were ready to investigate a large hole that had appeared out of nowhere. The heat was unbearable. The landscape looked barren, just sand and a few tough plants. I've never stopped thinking about that hole. As we set up camp, I felt uneasy. The hole was bigger than I expected. I walked closer, feeling drawn to it. It was eerie. There were strange symbols in the sand around it. I tried to show my team, but they laughed. They said the heat was messing with my mind. I thought they were wrong. The air felt charged, like a storm was coming. It made me want to dig. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling. I grabbed my flashlight and walked back to the hole. The darkness swallowed me. The beam from my flashlight lit up the edge of the pit. I heard a faint whisper, like the wind was trying to tell me something. I stepped closer, my heart racing. I thought I saw something shift inside. It felt wrong. The next day, I returned with my equipment. My radio crackled with static, and my readings were all messed up. My team was happy with their data, but I felt lost. I mentioned the odd signals I noticed, and they laughed again. I felt like I was going crazy. The hole seemed to pull me in. I spent more time near it. I watched as shadows moved strangely, not matching the sunlight. Then I thought I heard someone calling my name from the pit. Who could be down there? I felt cold. I shook it off and tried to concentrate, but panic began creeping in that I wanted my team to understand the symbols, but they brushed me off. I lost track of time. Days turned into a blur. I found myself standing at that hole repeatedly. Called to me. I had to find out what was inside. Then everything changed. Some of my colleagues started disappearing. They would walk away and not come back. I felt more alone as the days passed. I questioned my sanity. It wasn't normal. I even wondered if the hole was something I made up. But my gut told me to leave. Something was very wrong. I turned to finally walk away. The whispers grew louder. They seemed to know my fears. I asked out loud, "Is anyone there?" The response chilled me. It echoed back softly, "Why are you trying to leave?" I froze. The voice was real. I could feel it wrap around me. The pit loomed behind me. I was terrified, but I couldn't look away. I took a step back, unsure of what to do. The ground felt unsteady beneath me, and I realized I might never escape that place unless I acted fast. I stood at the edge, grappling with the choice before me. The whispers grew more insistent, wrapping around me like tendrils of fog. My heart raced, and the ground seemed to pulse beneath my feet. I took another step back, but the voice called to me again. Why not explore? Suddenly, a loud crack echoed across the barren land. I spun around, startled. It came from the direction of our camp. Fear gripped me. My team? I felt torn between the hole and my colleagues. I had to choose. Before I knew it, I turned and ran toward the noise. As I neared the camp, dread settled in my stomach. Tents stood eerily still, devoid of life. I called out, "Guys, are you here?" My voice echoed, but the only answer was silence. I stumbled over equipment scattered haphazardly on the ground. Felt wrong. Panic clawed at me as I peered into the nearest tent. Empty. Then, I noticed something glinting in the sand. I approached it cautiously. It was a broken watch, one belonging to Mark, a close friend. My pulse quickened. I looked around again, desperate for answers. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. Where was everyone? Through the growing dread, I could feel the pull of the hole behind me. I shook my head, trying to focus. I had to find my team. A movement caught my eye at the edge of camp. I wheeled around. A figure stood there, partially obscured by shadows. My heart raced again. "Is that you, Sam?" I called out, hoping against hope. The figure remained still. I took cautious steps toward them. What's going on? Where is everyone? I squinted, trying to make out who was there. But as I approached, the figure began to dissolve into darkness. I blinked in confusion. Weight panic surged through me. I spun back to the hole. I had to get out. Behind me, the figure reappeared. This time closer, whispering my name. I could feel its breath on my neck, ice forming in the air around us. I didn't want to look again. I could sense the pull of the hole, sharper than before, as if it was a living thing beckoning me. I felt trapped. Breathing heavily, I turned back to the figure. "What do you want from me?" It stepped forward, revealing a face I recognized. Sarah, one of the geologists on my team, but something was off. Her eyes were vacant, devoid of life. "Join us," she murmured, her voice low and haunting. "It's so much easier here." I stumbled backward, shaking my head. "No, I need to find the others." "Why search for them?" she asked. "This is where they belong now." Her gaze drifted toward the pit. It felt like a trap, blending seduction with threat. I took a step back, my resolve crumbling. Then I heard another whisper that wasn't hers. "Come closer and you'll understand." It emanated from the hole, zinging through the air like electricity. Everything in me screamed to run, but I found myself looking down into the abyss. "What do you mean?" I shouted, desperate for clarity, or perhaps for a sign of hope. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath my feet. I lost my balance and stumbled forward toward the edge. Panic surged again, and I grabbed the earth to steady myself. My heart was pounding so loud, I could hardly hear anything else. But then, in the depths below, I saw something alight, flickering like a candle. It was mesmerizing. I couldn't look away, even as a sense of dread filled me. With icy fingers, the whispers wrapped around my mind, urging me forward. I took a deeper breath. It was now or never. That light seemed to promise answers, but at what cost? I felt drawn to the light, its glow pulling me like a moth to a flame. My body hesitated, but my mind was in turmoil. What if the light held the answers I desperately sought? My heart hammered in my chest as I leaned closer, teetering on the edge of the pit. "Come closer," the voice called again, smooth and inviting. The ground shook once more, and I recoiled, fear straining in my throat. "Where are you?" I shouted. "What happened to my friends?" My voice echoed back, empty and mocking. "Join us," Sarah's voice whispered, as if carried on the wind. Panic surged through me again. I couldn't let that darkness take me like it had taken her. I fought the urge to yield to the seductive pull of the pit. "No!" I screamed, shaking my head violently, trying to clear my thoughts. In that pivotal moment, my gaze caught sight of movement. Something glittered at the edge of the circle of light, a small object half buried in the sand. I hesitated, weighing my options. I needed to know what it was, but stepping away from the void felt impossibly wrong. Taking a steadying breath, I turned away from the pit, my eyes fixed on the object. As I moved closer, I recognized it, the same broken watch I had seen earlier, but now it was covered in dark sand. It looked as though it had been there for days. I knelt down, panic shifting to confusion on the watch's face. The hands were stuck at 3:15. It wasn't just Mark's watch. It was also the time we'd seen the strange disturbance in the area the last time we were together. The unease from moments before crept back in. "Mark," I whispered, hoping against hope that this was a clue that he was alive somewhere. But just then, the whispers grew louder, swirling around me in a chaotic noise that matched the frantic beating of my heart. I covered my ears, trying to block them out, but the sound seeped into my mind, drowning out everything else. "Don't look for him. Join us," they pleaded, almost in harmony. I stood and looked back at the pit, the light flickering more violently now as if responding to my fear. In a moment of clarity, I realized that if Mark was down there, I had to save him. Whatever was happening here, I knew it was wrong. "Stay back," I shouted at the shadows, at the figure that now loomed larger than before. "I want to become one of you." I turned, running away from the edge, away from the whispers that begged for my surrender. But as I sprinted toward the tents, an invisible force blocked my path. The air thickened around me, heavy and suffocating. I stumbled and fell, landing hard on the ground. I gasped for air, glancing back at the hole, which now seemed to pulse in rhythm with my racing heart. The light below had dimmed, but now larger shadows crept along the camp, too. I scrambled to my feet, adrenaline coursing through me as I looked for another way out, searching for the nearest escape. That's when I saw an old map lying near the equipment, partially buried in sand. This could lead to way more answers, or it could be another trap. Either way, I couldn't stay here any longer. My team needed help, and something in that map felt pivotal to finding them before I, too, was swallowed whole. I lunged for the map, fingers trembling as I pulled it from the sand. It was worn and faded, the edges crumpled as if it had seen too much of the sun. I quickly unfolded it, revealing a rough sketch of the area and some markings that didn't make sense at first glance. There was an X near the pit, but another point seemed to indicate a cave system just northwest of where we camped. Time was of the essence. I couldn't wait to decipher every detail. With one last glance at the pit, I stuffed the map into my pocket and took off toward the trees lining the edge of our camp. I could feel the shadows clinging to my back, the whispers fading into a low hum, still reverberating in my skull. I couldn't let them catch me. I moved quickly, heart pounding in my chest, adrenaline spreading through my veins. If Mark was down there somewhere, then I needed to act fast. The trees loomed ahead, dark and imposing. As I crept closer, I noticed footprints on the ground, smaller prints alongside larger ones, barely visible in the moonlight. Could it be? I took a deep breath, nudging aside my fear. If this was Mark's trail, then I was close. I followed the prints, my heart racing. My mind raced. What had happened to them? How far had they gone? The silhouette of a cave entrance soon jutted out against the night sky. I instinctively hesitated. Something about it felt off, like it was waiting to consume anyone who dared approach. But I couldn't stop now. I had to know what lay inside. As I stepped closer, a chill swept through the air, almost tangible. I reached for my flashlight, the beam shaking as I illuminated the dark maw of the cave. In that moment, I could almost hear Sarah's laughter echoing from deep within. It made my skin crawl. I fought the urge to turn back. If I wanted to save my friends, I had to press on. But then I spotted something glimmering on the cave floor. I knelt, careful not to breathe too loudly. It was a bracelet, Sarah's bracelet. The one she never took off. My heart sank. "Sarah," I called, but my voice came out as a broken whisper. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. The shadows around me seemed to close in as if drawn by my words. I knew I was not alone. I could feel it. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath my feet, and the whispers returned, sharper this time, filled with malice. "Join us," they urged, no longer pleasant or inviting. Then, without warning, I heard a soft, quick rustle behind me. I turned, flashlight beam swinging wildly, revealing nothing but the inky darkness of the trees. Panic surged again, mixing with resolve. I couldn't be afraid. Not now. I had to keep moving. I backed into the cave, pushing ahead with only the tiny slice of light to guide me. The walls were rough and jagged, echoing every sound I made. "Where are you?" I called again, desperation creeping into my voice. The only response was a low growl that resonated from deep inside the cave. I hesitated, a sinking feeling washing over me. Something was waiting down there, but so was Mark, or what remained of him. I took a shaky breath and pressed on into the darkness, my grip tightening on the flashlight. I didn't know what would happen next, but I needed to uncover the truth. As I ventured further, the air grew heavier, pulsing with an unseen energy. I could feel it all around me, a presage of something terrible about to unfold. And then, a scream echoed somewhere deep within the cave. It split the silence like glass. My blood ran cold. I bolted forward, chasing the sound. I had to find them before it was too late. My footsteps echoed against the cave walls as I rushed deeper, driven by that haunting scream. It was a rush of desperation, fueled by the hope of finding Mark and Sarah. Panic clawed at my throat, choking me with every step I took. "Mark," I shouted, my voice bouncing back to me, mocking my fear. The darkness swallowed my words, but I kept calling out, searching for any sign of them. I paused at a narrow passageway, the air thickening around me. I hesitated, unsure of what lay ahead. That's when I heard it again, a voice, soft and pleading. Help me, my heart sank as dread wrapped itself around me like a vice. It sounded like Sarah. Sarah. I yelled, launching myself into the narrow passage. The walls felt nearly suffocating, but I pressed on, the voice growing louder as I approached an opening. The flashlight flickered, casting strange shadows that danced along the walls. I felt the chill deepen, creeping up my spine. As I stumbled into the larger cavern, I froze. Before me lay a heavy stone altar, slick with moisture. To my horror, it was stained an ominous crimson. And there, bound to the altar, was Mark, eyes wild with fear. Relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by panic. Mark. I rushed forward, but a figure emerged from the shadows, blocking my path. It was tall and cloaked, its face hidden beneath a dark hood. A guttural growl escaped it as it stepped closer, revealing deep-set eyes that gleamed with malice. Leave, it hissed, the voice chilling me to the bone. This is forbidden. I froze, caught between my instinct to flee and the urge to save my friend. I have to help him, I shouted, feeling my resolve hardening. The thing advanced, its presence filling the air with dread. You cannot, it warned, pointing a gnarled finger at me. You will join them. I took a step back, adrenaline surging through me. I had to think quickly. Couldn't let fear consume me. Mark, hold on. I shouted, desperate to keep him focused. I could see him struggling against his bonds, the panic in his eyes mirroring my own. Then I noticed something on the altar, an intricate symbol carved into the stone, glowing faintly. It pulsed in rhythm with the growls coming from the figure. I felt a strange connection to it, as if it held the key to breaking whatever was going on in this place. You want him? I shouted defiantly, locking eyes with the hooded figure. You have to go through me. The creature seemed taken aback for a moment, and I seized the opportunity. I dashed forward, adrenaline pumping fiercely as I reached for the symbol. But just as my fingers grazed the cold stone, everything went dark. The last thing I heard was Mark's panic scream echoing through the cavern. Then silence. When the darkness faded, I was no longer in the cave. I stood in a shifting landscape, surrounded by sand and shadows. The whispers were louder now, swirling around me like a storm. I had a horrible feeling I was somewhere far worse than before. What happened? I gasped, spinning in circles, searching for Mark, for Sarah, for anyone. But I was alone. A terrible thought struck me. I hadn't just come to save them. I might have just walked into an even greater nightmare. The ground beneath my feet felt unstable, shifting like the shadows around me. I stumbled, trying to regain my balance, but the whispers tightened their grip on my mind. Panic surged again. Where were Mark and Sarah? I squinted into the darkness, drawn toward a distant flicker of light. I took a hesitant step forward, the coarse sand shifting beneath me. Each footfall felt like an intrusion in this strange place, one that was not meant for me. Mark, Sarah, I called, my voice barely rising above the wind. No response. The silence was suffocating, filled only with the whispers that seemed to mock my attempts to find them. Then I heard something, a rustling, just beyond the flickering light. My heart raced. I crept closer, hoping against hope it was one of them. As I approached, the shadows moved, revealing a figure huddled near the light. Who is it? I asked, my voice trembling. The figure turned slowly, revealing a gaunt face, hollow eyes staring back at me. I'm lost, it whispered, the words barely escaping its lips. Are you Mark or Sarah? I pressed on, desperate for an answer. But the figure just shook its head, tears of sand gathering in its eyes. Please, it whimpered. You shouldn't be here. Before I could respond, the light flickered violently, casting long shadows that crept toward me. Instinct took over, and I turned to run back, my feet sinking into the sand. But the whispers grew louder, wrapping around me, pulling me back toward the figure. Help! Cried. You can't leave. You have to. Just like that, the figure vanished into the shadows. I fell to my knees, gasping for breath. What was happening? I felt like I was losing my grip on reality, trapped in this endless expanse of despair. Suddenly, The ground beneath me shifted again. A rumble echoed, and a crack appeared in the sand, widening rapidly. I scrambled back, watching in horror as it opened further, revealing a dark abyss beneath. "Mark, Sarah," I shouted again, my voice breaking. I couldn't just stand there while they were in danger. I had to do something, anything. I forced myself to the edge of the chasm. It was deep, too deep to see the bottom. The whispers intensified, mingling with the deep growls from before. It felt like the shadows were alive, reaching up to grab me. Then, in that moment of uncertainty, I saw something glimmer inside the darkness. My heart raced. What if it was a way to reach Mark? A way to find Sarah? I took a deep breath, plunging my hand into the darkness. A force pulled me closer to the edge. The whispers became a cacophony, a storm of voices that clawed at my sanity as I gripped the glimmering object. A hand shot up from the depths, gripping my wrist. My heart dropped. It was cold and clammy, sending waves of fear through me. "Don't let go!" the voice cried. But whose voice was it? I stared into the abyss, the darkness pulling at me, threatening to consume everything I knew. I had to decide, hold on or let go. The tension surged, and I felt the grip around my wrist tighten. I braced myself for what would come next. The grip on my wrist was stronger than I expected. It pulled me closer to the edge, and I teetered there, my heart pounding in my chest. "Who are you?" I gasped, trying to make sense of the situation. "I'm your way out," the voice responded, trembling and urgent. "But you need to trust me." Trust? In a place where shadows whispered and faces disappeared? My mind spun, but I couldn't pull away. "Mark, Sarah." I screamed again, desperation clawing at my throat. Panic surged within me like a wild current, and I didn't know if it belonged to fear or hope. "Focus," the voice urged. It was close now, raging against the darkness below. I could feel the icy fingers on my wrist shaking, pleading for me to understand. "We don't have time. They're coming for you." My heart raced at the implication. "Who's coming?" I shouted, but the voice didn't answer. Instead, it tugged once more, and I felt myself sliding toward the edge. I kicked my feet against the sand, anchoring myself. "Not yet," I cried. "I need to find my friends." "Your friends are lost," I screamed back. "They're not here. You have to let go." As I struggled against the pull, the ground shifted beneath me again. The crack widened, creating a ghastly rift, and I lost my footing. I fell forward, soundless for what felt like an eternity, until I suddenly landed unevenly on my side. Dust filled my lungs. I gasped, coughing it out. As my vision cleared, I realized I was no longer on the edge. I was in a new space, a narrow tunnel lined with sand and rock. The whispers were muted now, replaced by a low, insistent hum that vibrated through the walls. "Where am I?" I murmured, bewildered. I pushed myself to my feet, hyper-aware of the darkness pressing in around me. My heart thudded in my chest as I tried to catch my breath. "Follow the light," the voice echoed from somewhere in the tunnel. It was disembodied, bouncing off the walls and creating a sense of urgency. "It's your only chance." I hesitated. The tunnel was dark, the path unknown. But if there was a chance to find Mark and Sarah, I started moving cautiously, pushing forward. The light glimmered ahead, just a flicker, but enough to guide me. My hands brushed the cold rock, feeling for anything to steady myself. The tunnel felt alive, thrumming with energy, almost like it was breathing. As I neared the glowing light, it suddenly pulsed and dimmed. I stopped short, the warmth retreating. "No, come back," I yelled. The walls around me quaked, and I froze as another voice joined the whispers. "You shouldn't have come," it rasped. Chills raced down my spine. Behind me, the shadows began to coalesce. They twisted, dark shapes in the narrowing tunnel. My breath quickened as I realized I was not alone. Something lurked behind me. Drawn by the sound of my panic, I had to decide. Do I continue toward the uncertain light, or turn back into the growing darkness? The choice hung heavily in the air, pregnant with dread. Then, just as I heard the first scrape of claws against stone, I made my decision. I spun around, heart racing as the presence behind me grew closer. The shadows were thick, swirling like a living thing, and I felt their cold breath on my neck. Go! The voice shrieked. The disembodied urgency pushed me into action. I darted forward, desperate to reach the flickering light. I wasn't sure what I'd find, but I knew I couldn't stay here. Each step felt like it echoed in the void. The hum from the tunnel intensified, urging me on, but the darkness clawed at my heels. I glanced back just in time to see a pair of glowing eyes peering from the shadows. Panic surged within me, igniting my instincts. Please, just a little further, I gasped, my legs burning as I sprinted towards the light. At first, it felt like a beacon of hope, but the closer I got, the more unsteady the glow became, its brightness leaking away like sand through my fingers. Finally, I reached it. The light wasn't a way out, it was an opening, a fissure in the rock that ascended into a narrow shaft. I hesitated, glancing back at the darkness, still palpable and insistent. The whispering grew louder, overlapping with faint cries that sounded eerily familiar. Was that Mark? Sarah? I couldn't risk turning back. With chaotic determination, I climbed into the shaft. The walls were damp, slick with moisture that dripped down like a slow, maddening heartbeat. I dug my fingers into the stone as I pulled myself upward. Halfway up, a chilling gust blew through the passage, making me shiver. Strange shadows danced around me, making my nerves flare. I could still hear their whispers, slithering through the cracks in my sanity. Keep climbing. The voice urged again, more desperate now. I clutched the walls tighter, fear blurring my vision. I was almost there. Then everything went cold. The warmth of the light faded, and the shaft abruptly darkened. I gasped, panic flooding my veins as I looked up only to see the light disappearing. It wasn't just dimming. It was vanishing. No! I cried. I kicked against the walls, desperate to reach that flicker of hope, but the surface felt slick and unreachable. Then, something clawed at my feet. I looked down. From the abyss, long, shadowy tendrils emerged, curling around my ankles like a vine, pulling me down. I could feel the vibrations of their malevolence. It was a warning, a punishment for not turning back. Let go. The voice shouted, and I realized it was no longer my guide. It was a demand filled with anguish, urging me toward a choice I didn't want to make. I had to let go. Let go of the light, let go of the hope, let go of the chance to find my friends. When I felt it, an unexpected tug from above. Something was pulling me up. Trust me, the voice cried again. And just like that, my world flipped, launching me backward into the darkness. There was no time to scream. The shadows enveloped me, and I could only brace for whatever came next. I fell, and the darkness swallowed me whole. For a moment, all I could feel was weightlessness, as if the shadows were a net, cradling me in their cold embrace. I braced for impact, expecting to hit the ground hard, but instead I landed softly, like a feather settling on the surface. Confusion swirled in my mind. I opened my eyes to see not the cavernous walls I'd expected, but a vast, open space. The air smelled strange, dim and musty, yet oddly familiar. Above me, a deep sky painted in hues of purple and black was scattered with faint stars. I stumbled to my feet, disoriented. The whispers had quieted but were still present, weaving in and out of my consciousness like a haunting lullaby. I took a step forward, the ground beneath my feet shifting like quicksand. I focused my breath and calmed my racing heart. Suddenly, I noticed something in the distance, a faint glimmer, similar to the light from the tunnel. My instinct screamed to approach it, but as I moved, I felt the air thicken, a weight pressing against my chest. Where am I? I whispered into the void, but the only answer was silence as I got closer. The glimmer resolved into form, a pool of water, shimmering with a soft glow. It reflected not just the stars above but images, flickering like old film reels. I focused, my breath hitching as I recognized the scenes. It was Mark, my brother, standing alone in a dim alley. Sarah appeared next, Pacing nervously beside a door, my heart sank. "What happened to you?" I said, desperate to reach them. The surface of the water rippled violently, distorting their images. I stretched my hand toward it, feeling an intense pull. The whispers grew louder, jumbled voices warning me to stay back. But I couldn't. Not now. "I need to find them," I yelled into the silence. Then, without warning, the ground beneath me shifted again, and the water surged like a tidal wave, swirling around my legs. Panic ignited as I felt myself being pulled toward the pool. I fought against it, but the current was too strong. And just like that, I was sucked in, plunging beneath the surface. As I submerged, the world above faded, replaced by an unsettling calmness. I felt the water wrap around me like a shroud. Something flickered through the darkness, and I jerked my head toward it. A figure emerged from the depths, pale and indistinct, but I could make out the features. It was Mark. "Help!" I screamed, but my voice seemed to dissolve in the water. I kicked against the current, desperate to reach him. Instead, as I drew closer, the figure became translucent, slipping further away. "No!" I shouted, feeling despair gnaw at my insides. The current pulled me deeper, and I struggled, the images of my friends fading into the dark abyss around me. That's when I noticed what lurked behind Mark. A shadow thick, pulsating and watching. My heart plummeted. He wasn't alone. With renewed determination, I fought against the pull, clawing my way to the surface. As I broke free, gasping for air, the voices returned, shrieking warnings that pierced through the darkness. I looked back. Mark was gone, but something was still in the water, watching. I felt its gaze on me, cold and predatory. The urgency surged within me once more. I had to find a way out, fast. But the question echoed in my mind. Was I truly alone in this realm? I surged out of the water, gasping for breath as I landed on the muddy shore, drenched and shaking. The haunting whispers surrounded me, louder than before, echoing in a chaotic chorus of despair that seemed to twist around me. I stumbled to my feet, disoriented, pulling myself further from that treacherous pool. My mind raced with memories of Mark and Sarah, images of laughter and friendship blending with the haunting shadows. I couldn't let their memories linger in this void. With renewed determination, I searched my surroundings. The landscape remained surreal, constantly shifting. Shadows danced beneath a dark sky, and I could feel the weight of unseen eyes upon me. "Mark, Sarah," I called out again, urgency flooding my voice. Silence hung heavy in the air, thicker than ever. I drew in a breath, willing myself to remain calm. It was all too easy to panic in a place where reality felt ephemeral. Yet I needed to stay in control. Each step felt precarious, the ground often threatening to swallow me whole. But I couldn't stop. I focused on the glimmering horizon, hoping it might lead me somewhere. Anywhere that didn't echo with despair. As I moved forward, the whispers morphed, intertwining with half-formed words, lingering threats and promises I couldn't decipher. "Don't get lost," one voice urged, almost gentle, contrasting the cacophony around me. I faltered, glancing back toward the pooling shadows. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, heart racing. "Join us," responded the voice, now distorted and tainted, the alluring call becoming a warning, fading like a flickering candle. I shook my head, recoiling from the pull that seemed to beckon me into the dark. "Never," I cried defiantly, pushing through the thick air that weighed me down. The glimmering horizon beckoned like a distant memory, a longing to escape this madness and find my friends. I had to keep moving as I broke into a run. The shadows swelled behind me, a looming presence just beyond my vision. I could feel the rush of cold air pressing against me, pushing me faster. My breaths came quick, my pulse racing with the thrill of urgency. "Help!" A voice echoed through the stillness, slicing through the whispers like a shard of glass. I skidded to a stop, heart pounding anew. It was Mark's voice, clear and desperate. The realization struck me like a lightning bolt. He was here, somehow lost in this realm of chaos, and I had to find him. "Mark," I shouted, pushing back the dread that threatened to consume me. "Where are you?" "I'm coming." The shadows thickened, the whispers rising to a crescendo as I felt the ground beneath me tremble. Fear surged again, but determination took hold. "Stay with me," I shouted, forcing myself to push forward, towards the direction the voice had come from. Suddenly, a flicker of light broke the darkness ahead. Hope ignited within me, and I raced forward, willing myself to reach that promise. Shadows clung to the edges of my vision, but I couldn't look back. I had to believe that Mark was waiting for me, that Sarah was too, somewhere in the depths. As I drew closer to the light, I could make out a figure, straining against the darkness. "Mark," I gasped, closing the distance, relief flooding my veins. "Emma," he called, eyes wide with fear. The light pulsed like a heartbeat, illuminating the chaos around us, revealing another gaping darkness nearby, one that breathlessly loomed over him, hungry and persistent. I reached him and grabbed his hand. The shadows writhed, nearly swallowing us. "We have to go now," I urged, pulling him toward the shimmering light. But he shook his head, fear snaking into his eyes. "Wait, Sarah, she's here too," Mark said, peering into the darkness. "I can feel her." I hesitated, the weight of responsibility heavy in my chest. "We can't help everyone," I said, desperation clawing at my throat. "We have to escape." But even as I spoke, I felt her presence lurking just behind those shadows, calling to us. The whispers intensified, thrumming, crashing over me like waves. "Don't leave. We can't let her go," they cried, pulling at every fiber of my being. "Stay with me, Emma." Mark's grip tightened. "We can't leave without her." Looking back into the swirling void, I felt a shudder run through me. Was it possible she could still be saved? But if I turned to follow the whispers, I may lose him, for this darkness was tenacious, and I wasn't certain I could withstand it all again. "Mark, we have to choose," I shouted against the noise, panic threatening to overwhelm my senses. Everything split into chaos around me. "What do we do?" he cried back, uncertainty flashing in his eyes. The light pulsed brighter, a brief slice of neon hope amid shadows that sought to collapse in on us. I wrestled with indecision, my heart heavy. "We can't be lost like this," I whispered, grounding myself. In that single, fleeting moment, I knew we would have to decide to step into that beacon or succumb to the call of the dark. The question loomed unanswered in the back of my mind as the shadows deepened, swirling, trapping us between choices with unknown consequences. And then I looked back at Mark, the flicker of hope in the distance choking with uncertainty. Would we step towards it together, or would we be swallowed whole?